The recently published Venom Us30 Scalp by Venom Labs has been slowly making its way to the top of the MQL5 marketplace. In today's video, we're going to dive in to see what strategy it uses and if it has a long-term statistical edge. This video is sponsored by the Prosperity Algo Affiliate Program. Affiliates earn 30% commission on all sales made, which is currently $300 per sale. Click the link in the description to get your affiliate link. So this bot initially caught my eye because the reviews and the comments so far seem really solid. It has a live signal and the developer seems to be a very knowledgeable guy. And essentially here we can see that this is a US30 specific EA, and the developer also has a similar one, I believe, on Gold, which I'll also be making a video about. And in terms of the sales page here, we can see that he's saying that this bot does not use any indicators or any sort of generic trading style, but instead uses a proprietary mathematical algorithm, which is interesting. So algorithm realistically just means like decision-making process based on mathematics. So it's not a big stretch to think that one could develop a proprietary trading algorithm. Most systematic traders would do something like this, and they would just call it a model or an edge or a strategy. So nothing wrong with this approach here. And effectively, it could be based on like a statistical pullback or some sort of ratio, or even just like some sort of deviation from the mean. There's plenty of different things that you can do, and I'm sure he's done something of that nature here. So yeah, that all seems pretty good so far. And effectively here he's saying this is a trend following strategy that needs multiple different confirmations. And he also says that there are dynamic risk to reward ratios, meaning that there's likely like dynamic stop loss and take profit levels. And interestingly enough as well, he made a really great video here where he walks us through the trading strategy. He's mostly just running a backtest here and giving some high level information, but it's still always very good when a developer makes a video because it shows that they're confident in their product. They want to put their name behind it and speak in detail in regards to how it works and give us just a bit more insights. So all of that is actually looking really solid so far. And effectively, we can also go check out the live signal to get a bit more information how it works. And we can see that so far it's been generating consistent, steady returns on a live and a real broker's live account too. Unfortunately here, he has yet to take a loss, so it doesn't give us a ton of indication about how the strategy works. Because unfortunately, if there's only winners so far, it doesn't really show us what the risk to reward ratio is like, or what the frequency of losers could be. So one thing to note. That being said, it's still a fairly new signal. It's been running for around a month. So it shows us that likely as time goes on, we'll get some more information and we can make a more holistic assessment of the bot. But so far it looks, at least from the sales page, like a pretty legitimate strategy. This developer seems to be a knowledgeable guy, just checking out his bio and whatnot. So there could be something here. So now let me actually take the liberty of downloading this bot and running a back test. And there's some sort of grid style here. Like in his sales page, I believe he says no martingale. But if we actually go into the trading, we're not seeing martingale. So it's right, like martingale refers to lot scaling. However, we are clearly seeing grids. And here, for instance, like it runs on the M30, but if we zoom into the M1, it's taking a whole basket of tiny trades on the US30, all of which close in a grid. So it appears that that is part of the strategy, because when there's moves, it's opening up like clusters of trades, right? Like occasionally it's those one-offs, but quite frequently there's these little grids which open, or sometimes big grids which open on the US30. And this is a bit of an interesting style because I haven't seen a ton of grid-based systems on US30, given that it's a very trending asset. And it can be a bit dangerous to run more of a grid style because it can really go significantly. Like you can have a 10% daily move in the US30. Like I'm not sure if you guys remember like the day when Donald Trump announced a 90-day pause in the tariffs. There was all of a sudden like an absolutely enormous spike in equity markets. Had you been using some sort of grid-based system on that day, you could have just enormously scaled your lot size, and that could have gotten dangerous. That being said, he is doing a few interesting things here, which I believe are being done to counteract that. For instance, he's not scaling lot size, so it's a bunch of really small ones. Also, interestingly enough, too, he might be putting in some sort of like required margin, or like, as we can see here, like free margin filter. So that would enable you to limit how many levels one is opening. So nothing necessarily wrong with this style of system. You just have to be very mindful of that, and be mindful that if you have any sort of scaling system, you can open up a ton of grids far more than you expected rather quickly. And you have to know that you have to use some sort of equity stop loss or a margin cap or a number of levels cap to be able to prevent it from blowing up. But in all of his sales materials and whatnot, he appears to be very focused on safety. Therefore, perhaps there is some sort of filters, and he does perhaps advocate for the use of like equity filters to prevent that from happening. So now, as the final step here today, I'm going to run a visual back test to see if we can get anything else more in detail. Yeah, so clearly it's a grid-based system, right? You can see he's really just running tons and tons of little trades, and nothing wrong with that, right? Like there are more legitimate grids. This is a grid-based system. It appears to be like he's waiting to enter on pullbacks. Yeah, because he also mentioned this is a trending system, so perhaps he's waiting to enter on pullbacks in the direction of the prevailing trend. That seems fair enough, right? Like here, we'd be clearly in a downtrend, there's a pullback, open up in grids, open up a massive grid. Let me pause it here too, so like we're clearly in an uptrend, there's a pullback, enter. So it might be like a percentage retracement based algorithm. I wouldn't be surprised if it's that. You never know for sure, but yeah, it looks to be that. So yeah, there's definitely a real strategy here. Conclusion, from what I think it is, there's a pullback on with the prevailing trend, and it's primarily using grids to enter. If we look at the actual lot sizing here, I am using fixed lots. He does have a strategy where you can scale lot sizing, but I believe that you're not actually scaling lots in an individual grid. That would just like adjust with the balance of the account, I believe, but we would have to check that in more detail in another video. So if you like this type of grid-based system, this is probably a pretty solid one. However, this is not my personal preferred style, just because I don't like using any sort of grid system on trending assets in particular, but some people would really like this type of system, so to each their own. And at the same time, I think a big caveat here is you would need to have some sort of safety filters to prevent excessive levels from opening. That's something you always have to be mindful of here. But the developer appears to be knowledgeable and sharing that this is essential to have success with this type of bot. So in conclusion, real strategy, there is something here. However, this is a higher risk strategy, and one we need to be mindful of that when deciding to run this, and also just make sure that it matches your personal risk preferences and that you're able to cap total downside. So guys, hope you liked the video. I'll see you in the next one, and leave me a comment if you have any questions.